You are listening to the City Vent, proudly sponsored by the Westview Motor Company, supplying your new and used cars. Find us at westviewmotorcompany.co.uk.
Okay guys, so before we get started, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Complete IT Systems Limited, providing industry-leading IT solutions for 14 years. Makes sense, right? Today I'm with Andy. Andy, how are you, mate?
I'm all right, thanks. How are yourself?
I'm not too bad, but let's just face it, this man down here is someone who you will have heard of. If you haven't, you've certainly seen a picture of him because he was on our flag of legends. The one and only Ces Podd. Ces, how are we today?
I'm great, thanks, Chris. Andy, good to speak to you guys.
Fantastic. What we want to do is, I'm really excited about this episode to talk to yourself. Obviously, you had the most appearances for Bradford City. But I think if we start from right at the beginning, if that's all right. So tell us a bit about your upbringing, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Because you probably know that I'm originally from the Caribbean, which is where I am now. I'm back in St. Lucia. I was actually born in St. Kitts, but when we were kids, my parents moved to the UK, and we moved to Leeds. And that's basically where my love for football began. I remember seeing a guy called Albert Johansson play for Leeds United. He was the first black player I'd seen play. And I used to really admire him because great player, and with me being the only black kid in my region, it was good to see somebody like him doing so well. So I continued going to the games, and really fell in love with it through watching him and playing in the street with my mates. So that's how that he was really my inspiration, should I say, when it came to falling in love with the game.
So I've read up a little bit about you, Ces, and I saw that you was studying artistic design or something on them lines, and that football's supposed to be a hobby, just something that you enjoy doing. So how did that change to going from a hobby to pro?
Yeah, that soon flipped, didn't it? Because it became football became my job, and then the art became my hobby. But yeah, I used to go to what happened, was I was spotted by a Man U scout. I used to go to church, a church called Bridge Street Church in Leeds with my parents, and they formed a football team, and we used to play regularly. Sorry, I think I lost you there. And I was spotted by a Man U scout and asked to go for trials and given a form to fill out. But when I sent it back, explaining that I was from the Caribbean and my ethnicity and everything, I never heard from them. So I'm not saying that was anything to do with it, but it felt as though there was like a stigmatized kind of approach to the way they went about selecting trialists. So then it happened again with Wolverhampton Wanderers. I was spotted by a Wolf scout, and I went for trials and wasn't selected to take part in the trial when they picked the two teams. And so my dad said to me, because he went with me on all the trials, and he said to me, look, you need to study, forget about football, it's just a hobby. You need to study your graphic design, you're good at that. And that's why I ended up going to Bradford Art College. Having said that, that's where I met a guy, who introduced me to Bradford City, because I went to Bradford Art College, and his dad worked for, he was a scout with Bradford City, and they asked me to go for a trial. And I went, and Jimmy Wheeler, who was the manager at the time, just happened to be at the trials. And he said, I'm looking for they picked two teams, and again, I wasn't in either of the two teams. And he said, I'm looking for a left back. And I put my hand up, and at the time I was playing right wing, to be honest. And that's the way I got on the field. And from that, he selected me. He came personally to speak to me and asked me to come to train with the juniors on a Tuesday and a Thursday at Bradford. And that's how it all started from.
Am I right in thinking, I don't know if this is true, but I read something that said that you told him you were a left footer and you went home and tried to practice with your left foot for a year before you said anything?
It's true. I was so scared that he was going to find out, because he said, I'm looking for a left back, and I put my hand up and said, I'm a left back. So I got on the field, and I can't remember much about the game. I just remember really enjoying it. thinking I'm on a field with, and a chance to be a professional footballer. And then when he approached me, I was so pleased, and I went home really excited, and straight out backyard, left foot, just practicing knocking the ball against the wall, and I did that for like about three months or so. And I think I played every time I played. We went training because I don't know if you remember, but at the time, our training ground was a car park at the back of Valley Parade. I don't know if you remember that, but I don't know how on earth we managed that. But the amateur players used to practice on that. We didn't have the luxury of a grass field even. So I managed to disguise my lack of ability with my left foot on that field because the surface was so bad anyway. But I got through it, and I ended up playing some practice games, and then I can't remember why, but I switched to right back, and obviously I excelled there because I was using my right foot for the first time for a length of time. And there was a guy called Maurice Conroy. You probably won't remember him, but he was the coach at the time, did a lot of work with the young players there. I mean, we had people like Dick Exley, Pete Turbett, Steve Arney, Pete Hammond, John Middleton, Joe Cook came eventually. They were all youngsters who perhaps didn't really make it big in the first team, but they actually made first team appearances. And they were all juniors who came from those training sessions we used to have with Maurice Conroy. So we had a really good development system even at that time.
Incredible. So going from amateur then into your very first game as a pro for Bradford City, who was it against? Because I wasn't born. I wasn't even a twinkle in my mum's eye at that point.
I remember making my debut, and it was really funny because I remember playing for the juniors the week before we played Newcastle away, and I remember I was playing at right back, and they had the left winger who was really quick, and I was determined that he wasn't going to get past me. And I remember him coming at me, and I've clattered him. I think one of the things that Maurice felt that it was that I needed to build myself up because I was pretty lightweight, and he wasn't sure that if I was going to make it, that I was aggressive enough. And I remember that game because it wasn't unintentional, but I remember hitting this kid so hard that he didn't continue in the game, and I got a card. So on the following Friday, I remember I'm in the changing rooms, and it gets a call from a knock on the door, and the secretary comes. She goes, Ces Podd, the boss wants to see you. So I'm thinking I'm going to get told off here for hitting that kid and getting booked. So I'm walking to his office, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I going to say? So I walked into the office, head down and everything, and he said, sit down. So I sat down. He goes, the Newcastle game, did all right, didn't you? I said, yes, boss, really sheepishly, yes, boss. He goes, well, you'll be starting the game against Chesterfield on Saturday. Well, you can't imagine the feeling, because I've gone from thinking I'm going to get bollocked by the boss to him telling me I'm going to make my first team appearance at Chesterfield away. I didn't even say anything. I just got up. I couldn't because I didn't know what to say. I got up, went outside, and I remember thumping the air and just jumping. I was just so pleased, and I went into the changing rooms, and the guys are saying, what's he said? What's happened? And I said, I'm a first teamer. Just like that. And that was it. I mean, I never forget that moment. It's something you just don't forget, I've done a lot of things since then, but that moment when you're told that you're making your debut for Bradford at the time, that always stands out in my mind,
Yeah, so I believe back then, trainees were allowed to play first team football. So you weren't necessarily on a contract, were you, when you first signed for Bradford City? So that seemed to be the model. So for yourself, when did you sign your first contract? Did you sign it after that, or when was that?
No, that was different. I actually signed. I'd signed pro then at the time. Yeah, I'd already signed pro. What happened was they tried to sign me before I went to college, but my dad said, no, you're not signing anything until you finish your college. So I had to finish college, and then after that, he said, if you're that good, they'll come back when you finish. And they did, he came to my house and they signed my first contract. I can't remember the month, but it was in 1970. Wow, that's unbelievable. And then I made my debut that year as well, against Chesterfield. I never forget that, because I remember getting on the bus, I always used to watch the first teamers when they get on the bus with the Bradford City tag at the front, and thinking that must be such a good feeling, and I remember getting on the bus with the Bradford City sign on the, and feeling so proud, travelling to Chesterfield, and being met by the police at the top of the motor as he come off, and being given, you just feel really special, and it was a special time for me. And then I remember Pat Liney was the goalkeeper at the time, and I was sitting on a seat on my own, and he came and sat next to me, and he was saying to me, how do you feel? And I said, a bit nervous, but I'm excited. He said, don't be nervous. He said, you're playing in front of the best goalkeeper you'll ever play. And I started laughing, and I said, well, don't worry, because you'll be playing behind the best right back you've ever played played with. And he started laughing as well. So that's another, something else that always stands out. I think Pat's gone back. I think he's back in Scotland now, still involved in football, I think. But yeah, they were great times with some really special players that, looking back at the game now, I'll never forget. That group of players when I first made the first team, I mean, I've got them here. I mean, I always look at them and I think, I wonder what they're doing now. Like Pat Liney, Tom Hallett, he was the captain, centre back, really good centre back. Charlie Rackstraw, midfielder. Bruce Bannister, who he seems to score goals for fun. Him and Bobby Ham, and then there was a young left side midfielder called Peter Middleton, who I got on really well with because we were similar age, and it was just a really special time for me those days.
So what was your lifestyle like back then? Obviously, you talk about a lot of youth players that have come through into that Bradford City team. What was your lifestyle? What did you eat? What did you drink? How often did you train? Things like that.
Yeah, obviously in those days, they still had the diets that you were supposed to make sure that you ate at a special time, and make sure that you rested at the right time and things like that. I wasn't from a wealthy family, so we weren't able to buy steaks every day and stuff like that. And this was something that the club got involved with. And I used to be given a diet. I used to go to a restaurant every day nearly, 3 times a week, where I'd have steak and stuff like that, and it's crazy when I look back now, but we even used to have steak before a meal, for our meal before a game. They thought that was the way to go, but you wouldn't even dream of that now.
It's a bit heavy, isn't it?
Yeah, our pre-match meal was a steak, and it didn't seem to affect us. We still got around the field. But yeah, there were special diets, and you were told, when to rest, what type of rest period you have before games and things like that. That hasn't changed an awful lot. What has changed is the diets. That is just, if you look at the fitness of some of the players now and the work rate they get through, they've got the new stat system now, where everybody have a GPS system that they use for training sessions and even games. So the fitness level for me is a lot higher. It really is. Even when I'm working here in St. Lucia at this present time now, our international teams use the GPS system. We're very, very big on diets and rest periods and things like that. So it's moved on. The game has really moved on. And in terms of fitness, you see the way how quick the game is now. It's not about running and dribbling with the ball. George Best would have probably struggled because, he'd have had to release the ball a lot quicker than he used to, But yeah, it's moved on. And for me, you have to be a lot fitter.
Sweet. So as a right back, in your day, I think your goals tally over the 14 years you played for Bradford shows that you scored 3 goals for City, and
Good goals.
Well, they're good goals. There were decent goals, every single one of them. But like in today's game, it's very the wing backs are utilised a lot more in an attacking play. Do you think you could have handled that back in the day if it had been that sort of level of fitness and physicality?
I think if because during the time I played in that position, especially as a youngster from 18 onwards, I was never coached. It was something that I automatically did, and I played under something like 6 managers, and no one ever stopped me from going forward or told me I had to go forward. It was something that I always did. I think in today's game there would be a lot more coaching, and I would probably have been a better player. I feel as though my assets were attacking and getting forward, and perhaps what I could have worked on more is the final ball. But it was. I mean, we had people like Bobby Campbell in the team who, no matter where you put the ball, he's going to win it. But imagine if there was more emphasis on that, then I think people like myself would have benefited more. When I say people like myself, the role that I played as an attacking wing back at the time, it's even more so now in the modern game. You get most of the fullbacks, and a lot of teams play with 3 defenders, central defenders, and 2 attacking wing backs. So, I would have loved to have played in today's game because I think it would have suited me more.
So obviously you got into the team. You stayed in the team for a long time, Ces. And you were relied upon quite a lot. You had, I assume you must have had some loyalty towards Bradford because there were other clubs that were interested in you. So why did you stay at Bradford out of interest?
I never even considered leaving. There was a time when I asked for a transfer, but it was because I wanted a pay increase. That was it, and I thought at the time I deserved it. But then Portsmouth came in, and I looked at the map. Like at the bottom of England, it was like I'd have never been out. My family all live in the north, and the racism at the time. Whenever I left Bradford and Leeds, whenever you travel to places like Millwall and stuff like that, it was horrible. It really was, and the fans always supported me. I remember, guys, I remember the first time I got racially abused was, I think it was Millwall as well. We were playing them at home, and I've run onto the pitch, and their fans started doing monkey chants and singing that song, Bradford's Got a, the words. And our fans took over that chant, and then at the end of it, shouted my name and said, Ces Podd, give us the wave. And I remember doing that, and they all started clapping. And then every time the opposition fans shouted that, they shouted my name again. And eventually it appeared that the opposition's fans stopped doing that. And that cemented a relationship between myself and the Bradford fans straight away, and I'd never forgotten that. Every time we played, they would ask me to give them a wave, and it was just a special crowd, a special group of people that I enjoyed playing for and representing.
Yeah, that's one thing. My granddad, he died earlier on this year, but you were one of his favourite players. I was speaking to my grandma about this interview the other day, and she said to me that your granddad, the one thing he'd always say about Ces Podd was the Bradford City fans would always back him in the corner, because we all know that in the 70s and 80s, racism, hooliganism was rife. And I'm sorry you had to experience that, because you must have had to have such a strong mental resilience to be able to deal with all that hate towards you for no reason of your own, no fault of your own. But obviously, like you say, having the Bradford fans behind you the way they did, my granddad said no Bradford fan would ever allow a bad word to be said about you. So, like this, for me personally, speaking to you as well, just wanted to get it out of the way with. It's massive for me and my family, because, like I say, you were one of my granddad's favorite players.
That's great to hear. Thank you. Appreciate that. You know, and I think most black players who represented Bradford City will say the same. Bradford have a history of being able to embrace every nationality, you know, on and off the field. You know, if you look at the different races who either have businesses or actually live in Bradford, that speaks for itself. You know, so you know that's one area I think that Bradford can be proud of, and that's the integration that's taken place in that city. It's awesome.
So, I don't really want to tread over it too much or bring back any sort of like bad memories from the past. How did you, when you were going to places like Millwall, which is notoriously sort of like a bad place, especially back then for racism, how did you deal with that yourself mentally, and how did the other players react to that in the changing room?
I don't think it wasn't a problem for me eventually, because my total focus always was on playing and getting on with the game. And I think the managers that I had, you know, we had people like, as I say, Jimmy Wheeler was my first manager, and then Ray Wilson took over from him. We had Bobby Kennedy, John Napier, who actually played, and then after Bobby left, John Napier became manager. And then we had George Mulhall and Roy McFarlane, you know, so, and they're all people who understood immediately. I mean, one of the things I always encourage my coaches here in St. Lucia, national coaches, is that they have to understand every player, you know, before we bring them up for national duty. They have to understand the background, know what's going on, you know, and be able to support them in every way possible. And I think the managers that I had at Bradford City at the time, they all did that. They understood, you know, what made me tick. They knew my strengths and weaknesses and what they needed to shield me from. And I think one of the things I can always say about those teams that I played with, they understood that as well, you know. And you were there because you could play football and you were part of a team. And that was my whole focus, to represent the team. Anything outside of that, I just ignored.
Yeah, that's incredible. It really is. That's obviously something we'd never understand, and we can't. So, what was your favourite game for Bradford City? I mean, I know you mentioned obviously your first game, but what was your favourite game playing for us?
Oh, I can't remember the year, but I remember we played Norwich City in the cup, and I think we were due to play them away. I think it was a 2-leg, and we beat them at home, and something like that. But this particular game, John Bond was the manager of Norwich City at the time, and I remember there was a bout of flu that a lot of the players came down with, and John Bond had put out in the media that we'd already postponed the game once, and we need to get on with it. We're only a third division club, you know, and it really wound the players up. And I remember going there, you really didn't need any more motivation to beat them. And I remember going to Norwich and beating them. Little Billy McGinley scoring the winner, and that was such a great trip back home from Norwich. That's one of the games that stands out in my mind, yeah. And then you have the game against Liverpool, when we beat Liverpool at home in the League Cup as well, because they were such a brilliant team. We got beat away from home in the second leg, but the first time we beat them, Bobby Campbell scored the goal, and You know, you can imagine the excitement at the time. But they're the two games that stand out in my mind. Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, you mentioned Bobby Campbell a few times already, but what's your memories of Bobby? What can you tell us about the person that he was?
But, you know, that every time I ask anyone, when I speak to any of the ex-players who played with Bobby, that's the first thing that happens. There's a smile on their face, because that was him. You know, you can't really take him seriously because he doesn't take himself seriously. The only time he takes himself seriously is on the field. Off the field, great character. You know, he's one of those players that there's never a dull moment. You can't switch off, you know, because you're wondering what he's going to do next. You know, is he going to throw your underpants in the bathtub? Is he, you know, he's going to flick you on the ear and pretend it's somebody else that did it? You know, and just a really good guy to have around the team. But on top of that, he's one of the best, if not the best, forwards I've played with. You know, his movement off the ball is something that so many of the young players could learn from today, because, especially in today's game, because that's what it's about as a striker. It's your movement that triggers the final ball to you, for you to be able to get onto the end of it. And for me, Bobby was the best. I remember when we played Bournemouth, and I think we needed a point to go up, and we were losing, or we were drawing. Sorry, we needed 2 points to go up, and I think we were drawing the game against Bournemouth with about 2 minutes to go. And I remember the goalkeeper kicking a long ball, picked it up, 2 minutes to go, kicks a long ball, Joe Cook heads it on. And as he's about to head it, Bobby's movement gets him level with the last defender. Now that to someone who doesn't understand football, they would not even have seen that. But his movement allowed Joe to just help the ball on, and it gave Bobby an edge on the defender, because he's now facing the goal, and the defender has his back turned to the goal. And as the ball drops, he hits it first time, and it bobbles into the back of the net. But it was all about his movement and his anticipation of what Joe was going to do. And that was what Bobby was about. It's nothing you can explain to people who don't understand the game. But as a player, they're the things you look for. You're looking for that movement that triggers the killer ball that breaks the defensive lines. And that's what Bobby was good at. A tremendous player. I think even today, in today's game, he could be a top player.
Yeah, it sounds like. Who was the best player you ever played with? And then there's the next. Obviously, there's a follow-up question on that as well.
You mean apart from Bobby?
Apart from Bobby, yeah.
Yeah. There are a number of them that stands out. I think possibly I like Big Joe, because Joe was similar. You know, he could play anywhere as well. Joe could play midfield, which he never did, but he could. He played centre back. He played up front. He was strong. Probably didn't have the technique that some of the top players in today's games have. But for the level of football that we played, someone like him with his physique and everything, I always rated him as one of the best players outside of the top flight that I played with. And then I think Bobby Ham, I played about 2 or 3 games with him before he moved, you know, and trained with him and everything. And what a player he was. When I first got into the squad, he was my hero. It was like, wow, I'm training with Bobby Ham, you know, because it was about his movement, and he always ended up on the back of, you know, he always ended up in the right place at the right time, and he knew how to hit the back of the net. Awesome striker, you know. Again, even in today's game, I think he would do well. So I have to put him alongside. And I have to say, Bruce Bannister as well. Yeah. Bruce Bannister was, I think, one of the first players that went to, I think he went to France, didn't he, on a move from City. You know, he ended up playing abroad. So you can imagine, if you've got foreign clubs coming in for a player, you know, he must have something special. So those 2 players are awesome for me.
Just looking, he played for Dunkirk.
Dunkirk, right? Yeah.
Dunkirk. And who's the best player you've ever played against?
Oh, without a doubt, Kenny Dalglish. When we played Liverpool away, and it's the first time I've seen a player use underhand tactics to win every ball there was. I remember him backing into me and grabbing my shorts and turning me, and I couldn't do anything, and the referee didn't see it, and you can't even claim because you just feel so stupid, but he was such a good player. And again, it's all about movement, and that's something I've learned as a coach now, how important that is. And trying to track him was really difficult because everything he did was last minute. He already knew what he was going to do, but he waited until you were on your back foot, and then he'd do it. So his movement was such that it always gave him a head start on everyone. So if you watch some of the top players play, that's what it's about. And Kenny was the best at that. You didn't see him run around a lot, but when he did move, it was a killer move. He was going to get onto the end of it before you. So yeah, definitely Kenny Dalglish.
I want to talk about, so obviously you had 502 appearances for Bradford. 1981, you had a testimonial. I do want to talk to you about this. And your team was the Black Hole Stars, playing against, was it Bradford? I do apologise.
Yeah, but at Bradford 11 we played against.
So tell us a little bit about that then. How did that all come about? And the
well,
players
were incredible. Tell you what happened, Chris. My cousin was she was only about 7 at the time, and she used to come to some of the games. My mum was looking after her because her mum was in the Caribbean, so we looked after her for a while. I think she was 5. She was 5 at the time, and I used to bring her to the games, and she used to love coming. And then I asked her one day if she wanted to go to one of the games that I wasn't playing in, and she said no because there's no you in the game. I said no, not me. I know she said, but there's no other you. There's only you when you're there, and I couldn't understand what she meant. And then she saw another black player, and she said on the TV, and she said, "Hey, Uncle Seth, there's another you." And I've looked at it, and it was a foreign game, and there was another black player playing there, and I understood that. And I thought, if every kid is like that, every black kid is like that, then they need to know that every black kid have the opportunity to play, and I want them to see that. So in my testimonial, they advised me to have Liverpool or someone like that because I would make more money, but that wasn't what I had in mind. I just wanted black kids to see more black players on the field, and that was where that came from. And I knew quite, in those days, you kind of knew each other. So I knew Terry Connor, and I called him, and he passed the word around. And Garth Crooks, I knew Garth, and within about a week, everybody had agreed to play. They'd got permission from the clubs, and that's basically where the idea came from. I just wanted black kids to see there are other black footballers, playing professional football, and you can go and enjoy watching them.
It's incredible, but it's sad that you had to bring the light yourself to up on the issue. Obviously now we've got various different organisations that are trying to remove sort of like racism and stigmas around football, but it's still not completely gone yet. So like being able to get a lot of black footballers from around the country, getting them released, did their clubs fight back at all against you for wanting them to be released to come and play because you are making such a statement?
Yeah, no, and that was the thing that pleased me most, because none of the clubs, was against that happening. I think the one club, and I can't remember who the manager was at the time, and he had a right to feel concerned because Garth was at, I think, Spurs at the time, and I don't even know if I should be saying this, but he's not there anymore anyway. But Garth said, "I'm not sure the gaffer wants me to play." he said, but I'm here, I'll support if you want anything you want me to do. And I said, yeah, you can just mingle with the guys. And, we had people like Justin Fashanu and people like that there. And he was wandering around the changing rooms, and it was like 20 minutes to go to kick off. And and we were all talking to each other, and the kit is all around the changing rooms, and 10 minutes to go. And I looked around, and Gav takes his top off. All right. And then as we're talking, he takes his shorts and he's getting changed. And I'm going, I thought he said your gaffer would not. He says, I'll chance it, son. Don't worry about that. I'll chance it. Next thing you know, he's changed and he joined the team.
That's
so no, we didn't have any issues really. The clubs were quite supportive. Yeah.
What was the score, Ces?
I know I scored a penalty. I don't remember the score. I think we won. The All Blacks team won, I think, but I honestly can't remember. I remember scoring the penalty where the goalkeepers dived the wrong way 2 minutes before I took the kick. So, but yeah, it was a great night, a great game, and a great moment in my playing career. It wasn't the last game for Bradford City, but it was one that really stands out because it meant so much to everyone, hopefully.
Excellent. So moving slightly on. So your time at Bradford City's done. Ces Podd has retired. Do correct me if I'm wrong, but I've read that you'd retired, and then a few weeks later you get a phone call from Neil Warnock at Scarborough, and he managed to convince you to come out of retirement by saying you had an ingrown toenail. Is that true? Is it true?
Neil, listen, let me explain. It's kind of true, partly. Because Neil, I don't know if you've ever met him, but I'd not even met the guy, right? And I was on holiday, and I got a call from my mom. She says, there's a guy called Neil Warnock wants to talk to you. She said, he's given me his number. Can you call him? He said, it's urgent. So I called him, and he goes, Ces, Neil Warnock here. He says, I've just been told by the Football League that from now on, if you win promotion from the Conference League, if you win the Conference League, you automatically get promoted into the Football League. He said that it starts this coming year. He said, I've been putting a team together at Scarborough that's going to make history. We're going to make history. He says, I've got everything set up. I've got a great set of lads. All I'm missing now is a right back, a captain, and a coach. And he goes quiet, and I says, yeah, but I've retired, Neil. He said, don't retire. You're going to do all three jobs for me, and we're going to make history. That was my first conversation with him. So I said, Neil, I've retired. It's not something that I can just decide on. He said, well, don't decide on it yet. Come and see me when you come back from holiday, and we'll talk about it, and I'll tell you why we're going to win that league and make history. And he kept saying making history, right? So when I got back from holiday, I went to see him. He lived in Sheffield at the time, and I went to see him at his house. He had a terraced house, and upstairs, he invited me and went upstairs. Upstairs, he's got a studio where that's a Shropodis. I didn't know that, but that's his background, right? So he goes, come upstairs. So I went upstairs. He goes, sit on the couch. So I sat on the couch, and he's saying, this team I've got, and he's explaining, I've got Rico, this kid, that I've got a great centre back. And he's talking to me like that. He goes, as I sat down, it lifted my foot and took my shoes off. And he's talking to me like a matter of factly while he's doing all this, and he's going, says, you've got ingrowing toenails, haven't you? I said, how do you know that? He goes, I know everything about my players. I said, I'm not your player. And he goes, yeah, but you will be. So it says that. So he takes my other shoe off and takes my socks off. And he gets this thing, like knife, them things that they shave your toes with. Takes that. And he starts shaving my ingrowing toenail out. And I'm a little bit uncomfortable. I'm thinking, if this guy doesn't know what he's doing, I'm going to lose my toe here. But all the time he's talking about what we're going to do. So anyway, eventually he finishes his sales pitch and he goes, stand up. So I stood up and he goes, can you feel your ingrowing toenails? I said, no. He said, sign for me and you will never have ingrowing toenails again. That was it. I just started laughing and we both started laughing. He goes, no, seriously. He goes, Ces, we can do this. And he showed me the team, and I just said, all right, I'll give it a go, you know. And that's what happened. I signed for 2 years with him. We got promoted.
Yeah.
You know, and we made history.
50-1 you were to go up that year, because it was Barnet who were the favourites to go up.
Yeah, we weren't. I think we struggled the first couple of games, I think, but after that we just hit a really good run, and we got promoted, first team to do it, and he was right. But having said that, you know, with Neil, the way Neil works, the coaching bit. I mean, I was captain, I played right back, and I coached for about 6 weeks or so, but it was just because Neil doesn't coach, and what he's good at is man management, you know, and he understands the game. His tactics are awesome, but he needed somebody, you know, who could put sessions on, and do it on a you know, in a way that's going to affect the team based on what happened before. And it was just too much for me, so eventually he got someone else in, a guy called Ado, who was brilliant, you know, and we got promoted that year. Great year.
Fantastic stuff. And obviously then you retired. We won't talk about them too much, Ces, but you went and worked for some other team in West Yorkshire, I believe. Begins with an L. You did, was it community officer you were for a few years?
Well, who's that?
Leeds United.
Yeah. No, I was there for 9 years as a community officer. Yeah. And it really, again, that was about when I got the call. It was the players, PFA, who called me, one of the representatives, and said, "Look, Leeds are having some problems with racism and stuff. We want to put a community officer in there who we feel can assist them, who understands the game and who understands what they have to deal with." And they asked me to go for an interview. So I went. And, you know, it didn't take me long to accept the job. I lived there, you know, in Leeds, and I was a supporter when I was a kid. And what they wanted was someone who understood the game, who could do some coaching with the under-16s as well, which is what I did. So I looked after the under-16 team with a couple of other coaches, and my other job was to sell Leeds United to the community, and a big emphasis on the black community, which is the Chapeltown area in Leeds. There was an organisation that you probably know called the National Front at the time that was causing a lot of problems outside before games and things like that. And it was stopping a lot of the Asian and the black communities from coming. And the club felt that they had to do something to let these people know that the club itself wanted them at games. And, you know, that is one way of doing it. We actually took the players into the communities, did sessions with them, had coaching sessions with them. The then coach, the then captain of the team was, I forgot his name, the little redhead Scottish captain of Leeds United at the time.
Gordon Strachan.
Yeah, Gordon Strachan. Sorry, Gordon, you'll never forgive me. Don't let him see it. Yeah, and Gordon was awesome. You know, he used to organise the players so that they could do visits into the communities, and it worked. You know, we had a really good relationship eventually with the Chapeltown region.
Oh, that's fantastic. That is, and rivalries aside, I was only joking, but yeah, that's an incredible thing. And then obviously you became St Kitts and Nevis manager. How did that come about?
I worked with a guy called Hayden Evans after a while. He's an agency, and he used to represent a lot of the Leeds players, people like Gary Speed. So, yeah, what happened was a company gave us some money to invest in third world countries. And I actually went to St. Kitts representing Hayden's company, HN Sport. And, you know, we were looking at how we can assist them with the funds that was given to us to develop football in their country. And I was introduced to, obviously, because I'm St. Kitts, that was one of the countries we went to. And when I was introduced to the Football Association there, I kind of really thought I could do a lot more than just giving them funds. So eventually, I asked Howard if I could go and assist them by being the technical director, and he said, "Yeah, you can go for." He said, "You can go for 6 weeks, and your job will still be there." And so I went for 6 weeks, and then 6 weeks became 6 months, and I was there for over a year. And that's how I started working with FIFA. When I say FIFA fund these countries to have technical directors, and that's how I got into the technical directors business, by representing St. Kitts in that role.
So what was the participation sort of like in football? Because obviously in the Caribbean, it's probably more commonly known for cricketing countries, to be totally honest, isn't it? Like West Indies, amazing cricket teams, etc. So what was the sort of like participation levels then when you were back over there?
Yeah, I think it used to be mainly cricket, but very quickly football became, I would say on level terms with cricket, because most of the kids, remember, football is something that you only need a ball and you can play. With cricket you need ball, bat, pads, even helmets now, and the surface needs to be decent and stuff. So it wasn't difficult to get kids playing football. And again, FIFA had been brilliant because they invested in these countries. In every country, in third world countries, get the same amount of money as countries as big as the UK. So the funding that was given to these countries by FIFA was used to make sure that they develop football from grassroots level to elite level. And that's how I got introduced to the role of technical director. I saw a need for people who wanted, who had a passion for these countries, as well as have the knowledge of how to go about helping them develop their football.
Fantastic. And obviously Bradford City came over, didn't they, for a pre-season tournament with the Canadian Olympic team and obviously yourselves. How was that? That must have been, because we just got up to the Premiership, if I remember right.
That's right, yeah. That was great because we were able. It's funny, really, because the chairman at the time was the ex-chairman of Scarborough, so I knew him. So we invited them over, and it was great to have them here. They enjoyed it as a holiday, as well as preparing for the first introduction to the Premier League. So to have them here and to be able to do that, was massive for me. And the boys enjoyed it. We made sure we looked after them while they were here. They stayed in a hotel where they could, the swimming, it was really right next to the seaside, so they could enjoy a holiday, as well as preparing for the Premiership. But having said that, when I saw some of the training sessions those guys did, it was like, what? This is not a holiday. The training was awesome. Not only did they take part in these games, because as you say, they played against us, the St. Kitts national team, as well as the Canadian team, and on top of that, they did like pre-season. So, and their pre-season was nothing like I'd seen before. It was like, even though because here the temperature is nothing like in England. In England, when it's hot, but here it's humid and hot. Yeah. So watching them guys sweat, I was like, boy, I'm glad I'm not playing anymore. But they did all right, didn't they? That year, they did well,
That's right. Stayed up, managed to stay up. Did that team? Yeah, it's been. Listen, Ces, we've taken up for nuclear time, but I just want to say as well, genuinely from City fans and from the City event as well, we genuinely believe that you are a legend of Bradford City. You absolutely have deserved your spot on that flag. And I know that City fans absolutely agree with that as well. It's been really nice to have an insight into your life and listen back to some of your stories. And it has been, honestly, a real pleasure for myself, and I'm sure for Andy as well.
100%.
If you want to say anything, Andy.
Yeah, 100%. I just want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. But for everything you gave to Bradford City, it's before mine and Chris's time. But like, you created so many memories for my granddad. And so it's more towards a bit of the older generation that's going to feel all the nostalgia for you, Seth. But honestly, thank you from every Bradford City fan's heart, bottom of our hearts, for the 500 plus 14 years of service you gave to our club.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure. Give my love to everyone. And when I get back, I'll definitely be coming to the home game.
Good
Excellent.
man. Good
Can't
man.
wait to see you, Paul.
Okay, mate. Bless you all.